The day I gave birth, my husband signed over our house to his mother without telling me. As I lay in the hospital bed, she stood over me and whispered, "Get out of my son's home." That evening, they returned from their celebration to find my bags packed and a lawyer waiting in their living room. I, 35 female, had just given birth to my first child, a baby boy. After 36 hours of labor. No epidural because I reacted badly to the meds. I was swollen, exhausted, bleeding, stitched up. My entire body was screaming. But I was proud. I had done it. I brought my son into the world. My husband, Derek, 38 male, had disappeared halfway through the labor. At first, the nurses thought he'd just stepped out to get food or maybe got overwhelmed. I told myself the same thing. But then hours passed. My mother stayed by my side. She held my hand while I pushed. She cut the cord. Derek didn't answer his phone. No texts. Nothing. He finally came back 3 hours after the baby was born. Hair freshly washed. New clothes. Shaved. Smelled like cologne. Not a trace of the man who had been in a labor room hours earlier. I looked at him and asked, "Where were you?" He smiled, kissed me on the forehead, and said, "Just ran home to clean up. Figured you'd be sleeping after." I was too tired to argue. Too drained to push. So I let it go. The next visitor to the hospital room wasn't my sister. Not a friend. Not even his dad. It was his mother. Let's call her Marcia. Because of course it's Marcia. She walked into the room like she owned the place. Didn't even look at me. Walked right over to the baby in the bassinet, peeked in and said, "He looks like Derek." Thank God. Then she turned to me with that same fake smile she always wore and leaned in. I thought she was going to say something kind. Or maybe pretend to care. But instead, she whispered, "Start packing. You need to be out of my son's house by this weekend." I laughed because I thought it was some weird postpartum joke. She didn't laugh. She smirked. Then she said, "Derek signed the house over to me this morning. It's mine now. And I don't want you in it." I was hooked up to N4, bleeding into a diaper, barely able to sit up. I hadn't even held my baby for more than an hour. And this woman was standing over me claiming she now owned my house. The house my aunt left me. The one I grew up in. The one I fought to keep in the family after she died from pancreatic cancer. Technically, when Derek and I got married, we refinanced to remodel. His name went on the new paperwork for loan purposes. But I never gave up my rights. My name was still on the original deed from the trust. Marcia had no way of knowing that. She walked out of the room like she'd just handed me a birthday card. Just turned and left. I sat there staring at the wall, trying to understand what just happened. My mom was furious. She asked me what was wrong. I couldn't get the words out. My whole chest felt like it had collapsed. I finally whispered it. Derek gave the house to his mom. She didn't believe me at first. I didn't either. But I knew Marcia wasn't bluffing. She was cruel. Petty. Controlling. But she wasn't stupid. If she said Derek gave her the house, then something had been signed. And suddenly, Derek's absence during labor made sense. While I was pushing out a baby with a fever and a blood pressure cuff squeezing my arm every 5 minutes, Derek was with his mom at a notary's office. He had a quitclaim deed drawn up and signed his portion of the house over to her. He didn't tell me. He didn't warn me. He didn't even leave a note. He just signed away half the house and handed it to a woman who had openly said I was not wife material when we got engaged. She had tried to talk him into getting a prenup that would keep me from taking the house. He refused. So she waited. And now, right when I was at my most vulnerable, they pulled this move. What Derek and Marcia didn't know was that my dad is a retired real estate attorney. And my older cousin is a damn good family lawyer in New York. I texted them both from my hospital bed. I didn't even explain. I just said, "Derek signed over the house to Marcia. I need help. Fast." They were both in my hospital room the next morning with coffee, legal pads, and fire in their eyes. The quitclaim deed was real. He had filed it. Signed it. Notarized it. But there was a problem. He only owned a portion of the house. And under the original inheritance terms, any transfer of ownership had to be approved by the trust, which still had oversight on the deed, due to a provision my aunt wrote in before she died. Also, under New Jersey law, a spouse cannot transfer shared marital assets without the written consent of the other spouse. Especially not when that asset is under a binding legal trust. My cousin smiled and said, "They just shot themselves in the foot." I didn't say anything to Derek. I let him sit beside me in that hospital room. Let him hold our son. Let him kiss me on the cheek like he didn't just set my life on fire. Inside, I was planning. Every word he said, I stored away. Every time he pretended to be so proud of me, I wanted to scream. But I didn't. I needed to get home first. I needed to see what else they had done. I needed to make sure everything was legal. I needed to strike back when it would actually matter. 3 days later, Derek picked me up from the hospital. Eli was asleep in the car seat. He was all smiles. He even played music on the ride home. Like this was some movie. I stayed quiet the entire drive. When we pulled into the driveway, I saw a car in the spot next to ours. Marsha's. I asked, "Is your mom visiting?" He said, "No, she's moving in for a while. She's going to help out with the baby." I stared at him. He didn't blink. I said, "You didn't think to ask me?" He shrugged. "She owns part of the house now." I figured it made sense. That's when I knew he really believed it. That he thought he had the upper hand. That I was too weak, too tired, too focused on the baby to do anything. That was his biggest mistake. I stepped into my house, well, the house I grew up in, and it already felt different. There were boxes by the entryway, labeled in her handwriting, master bedroom, Marsha, living room, decor. That's when I realized something. She wasn't helping. She was moving in. I walked upstairs, holding my baby, barely able to manage the stairs. My body still felt like it was stapled together. Derek followed behind me, trying to be casual. When I opened the bedroom door, my things were pushed into a corner. Her things were already on the dresser. Her clothes in the closet. Her makeup by the bathroom sink. My toothbrush was gone. My stuff, moved, boxed, or tossed. I turned to Derek. "Where are my things?" He looked uncomfortable. I moved some stuff into the guest room. Figured we'd all be more comfortable this way. Me, the woman who just had his child, moved to the guest room. Marsha was sleeping in my bed. He said it so casually. Like it made sense. "Babe, it's just temporary. Once you're back on your feet, we'll figure something out. Mom's been lonely since Dad passed. And she did help with the deed paperwork." That's when it hit me. She planned this with him. They had been talking about this long before the birth. Maybe even before I got pregnant. What Derek forgot, because he never cared to understand legal stuff, was that we had a prenup. Back then, when we got married, he tried to act like he didn't care about money. But my dad insisted. Especially with the house. The prenup stated two very clear things. Derek cannot sell, transfer, or sign off on any jointly used property without my written consent. If Derek is ever found to act with intent to deceive or defraud in financial matters, he forfeits his claim to shared marital assets. We both signed it. So now? Not only had he broken the prenup, he'd committed a legal violation that could cost him everything. I didn't tell him that yet. I just said, okay. That same night, as I sat in the guest room nursing Eli, I got a notification on my phone. It was from our joint bank account. $17,000 had been withdrawn. A home improvement company in Newark. I hadn't approved anything. I hadn't even seen an invoice. I walked downstairs, my knees still sore, bleeding through a hospital pad, and asked him what the hell was going on. "Oh," he said, smiling, "Mom hired a contractor. We're going to open up the kitchen wall and make the dining area bigger. We figured it was time for an update." I stared at him. He drained our savings to start a remodel on a house he thought his mom now owned. And he did it without asking me. That was the last straw. I didn't pack everything. Just baby stuff. My legal documents. Clothes for Eli. My laptop. My phone charger. I left while Derek was in the basement, measuring tiles with his mother. I drove straight to my sister's place across town. The next morning, my cousin and I got to work. She said, "If we can prove this wasn't just impulsive but planned, it'll help your case." So I logged into our shared laptop. He never logged out of his email. And there it was. A thread of emails between Derek and Marsha. Subject, post-birth transition timeline. They had started planning this 4 months before my due date. In one email, Derek wrote, "Once she's back from the hospital, we'll say it's just temporary. She's too emotional and sleep-deprived to fight. If she leaves on her own, it'll be easier to change the locks and remove her from the joint utilities. You'll finally have your home back." Marsha replied, "Smart move. Once she's gone, we'll start the kitchen right away. Just make sure the title transfer is filed before the baby is born. I want to be on public record as owner by the time he's breathing." My blood ran cold. They wanted me gone. This wasn't just financial betrayal. It was emotional warfare. They waited until I was most vulnerable, exhausted, bleeding, alone in a hospital, to ambush me and steal the life I built. And Derek? He did it with a smile. My cousin's exact words, "We're going to rip them apart, piece by piece." Before I made a move, I needed something else. I called Derek that evening. I told him I was sorry for leaving so suddenly. That I just needed a breather. That I wanted to come home and talk things out calmly. He bought it. Told me he missed me. Said Marsha had made dinner and was willing to talk woman to woman. Perfect. Because I wasn't coming alone. So I told Derek I wanted to come back home. I told him I overreacted. That postpartum hormones were getting to me. That I just wanted peace and family and a calm place to heal. He bought every word. He said he was proud of me for being mature and thinking of the baby. That told me everything I needed to know. He still believed he was in control. I met my cousin, the lawyer, and my dad outside a local real estate office. We had a certified copy of the original deed, the prenup, and now the emails between Derek and Marcia. My cousin filed a temporary restraining order on the deed transfer and a motion to freeze joint marital assets, citing fraudulent intent. Within hours, Derek couldn't touch a dollar without triggering a court flag. They wouldn't know yet. Not until the bank notified them. But I didn't need them to know right away. I needed one more thing. While Derek was busy renovating, he had disconnected our home security system, claiming it interfered with Wi-Fi. What he didn't realize is that the doorbell cam was connected to a separate app and had a cloud backup. My cousin had the login. We pulled up the past 2 weeks. That's when the next twist hit me hard. 3 days after I gave birth, the footage showed a woman in her 20s, blonde, tall, wearing yoga pants, showing up at the house. At first, I thought it might be a friend of Marcia's or a new babysitter. Until I saw Derek kiss her. Not a hey there hug. A long, comfortable, deep kiss. Like they'd done it 100 times. Then she walked in carrying groceries. She was staying over. The next day? Same thing. She came in wearing one of his hoodies. Marcia even greeted her like family. My cousin went back to the email thread. One of the attachments, a PDF invoice for the home renovation, was from a Gmail address we hadn't noticed. The file name? Kitchen_draft_Laura PDF. My cousin clicked it. At the bottom, interior designer, Laura Jensen Cell, redacted, relationship to client. Personal Derek was sleeping with their interior designer. He hired his side chick to renovate the house he was trying to push me out of. And Marcia knew. She was in the loop. Smiling, helping, hosting. By the time I returned to the house, with my cousin pretending to just be a friend, the court had already faxed over the asset freeze and deed motion. But they didn't know yet. I needed to be in the room when they found out. I walked in holding Eli. Derek came to the door smiling. Told me how good it was to have his queen back. I walked into the living room. Marcia was sipping red wine. The same couch. The same smug face. Then from around the corner came Laura. The blonde. Holding my son's baby blanket. Oops, she said. I didn't know you were, back. She tried to set the blanket down, but my cousin stepped forward and took it from her without a word. I looked at Derek. You told her she could stay here? He didn't deny it. Just for a few days. She's helping with the remodel. I asked Marcia, did you really think this would work? She didn't answer. I turned to Derek. I know about the deed. I know about the money. I know about Laura. And I know about the emails. His eyes flickered. My cousin handed him an envelope. You've been served. Inside were the court orders. Asset freeze. Deed reversal filing. Temporary restraining order against altering the property. And a formal notification of divorce proceedings citing fraud, adultery, and abandonment. Derek went pale. She laughed. Out loud. Right in my face. You think this scares me, she said. You're just mad because you lost. He picked me. He picked her. You're the weak one. And that's when I knew. This wasn't just about the house. This was about power. She saw me as competition. Not just for Derek, but for control of the entire family. I didn't say a word back. I picked up my son. I told my cousin we were done here. As we walked out, Marcia yelled behind me, the house will never be yours again. But she was wrong. Because in just a few weeks, she'd be legally evicted from a property she never had any rights to begin with. 3 weeks later, we were in the courthouse. I hadn't seen Derek since the night I handed him the court documents. He texted a few times. One said, you're overreacting. Another said, can't we work this out privately? Think about the baby. I didn't reply to any of them. Marcia showed up that day in pearls and heels like she was attending a tea party. She didn't even glance at me in the hallway. Just whispered something to Derek and sat with her arms crossed. Laura wasn't there. She was smart enough to stay gone. My cousin stood beside me. Calm, collected. A stack of files, photos, camera screenshots, and printed emails tucked under her arm like a loaded weapon. The judge was old school. No nonsense. You could tell right away she wasn't going to tolerate any BS. When it was Derek's turn to speak, his lawyer tried to paint me as emotional, unstable, reactive, and unwilling to compromise. The judge raised a hand and said, we'll get to that. But first, let's talk about the deed transfer. That's when my cousin stepped up. She walked the court through everything, the quitclaim deed Derek filed during my labor. The fact that the house was still under a legal trust from my aunt's estate. The prenup clause that prevented him from doing any of that without my signature. The camera footage. The emails. And finally, she submitted a sworn affidavit from the interior designer Laura. She had no idea I was married to Derek. She had no idea the house belonged to me. And when she found out, she was furious. Her sworn statement revealed that Derek had told her I had abandoned the home, that I was mentally unstable, that the house had been his inheritance, and that his wife had walked out and left the baby behind. She gave us screenshots, voicemails, photos of receipts, everything. The moment the judge read Laura's affidavit out loud in the courtroom, Marcia's face went stiff. She whispered something to Derek. He shook his head. She whispered louder. He ignored her. Then she stood up and said, loudly, Your Honor, I had nothing to do with any of this. My son told me the house was his. The judge raised an eyebrow. Ma'am, you're listed on the quitclaim deed. Did you not read the document before signing it? I mean, yes, but then you knowingly signed a fraudulent claim. That's when Derek turned on her. Mom, stop. You were part of this. Don't lie in court. She snapped. I did this for you. He yelled back. No, you did this for yourself. Everyone froze. It was the first time I ever saw Derek yell at her. It was messy, public, loud, and honest. The judge banged the gavel for silence. The judge ruled the quitclaim deed was null and void. Derek's actions violated the prenup, and therefore, he forfeited any marital interest in the house. Marcia was to vacate the property within 10 business days. All remaining funds from the joint account would be frozen and reviewed for misuse. Derek was to pay legal costs and was temporarily stripped of custodial privileges pending a full custody hearing. She ended with, This court doesn't reward people who ambush their spouses during childbirth. Marcia left the courtroom without a word. Derek tried to talk to me in the hallway. I told him there was nothing left to say. He stood there, quiet, looking small. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he finally said. I looked him dead in the eye. You meant every part of it. You just didn't expect me to fight back. He didn't deny it. He just nodded and walked away. 10 days later, Marcia was gone. She tried to leave some of her furniture in the garage in case Derek needed it. I donated it all. She called once. Left a voicemail that said, You won this round. But don't think this is over. I didn't reply. I blocked her number. A few weeks later, Laura reached out. She apologized. She said she'd been lied to, manipulated, promised a life that wasn't real. She told me she never would have gone along with it if she knew the truth. She was sincere. She asked if she could see Eli, just once. I said no. She understood. By the time the custody hearing came around, Derek didn't even try to fight. He signed over primary custody, asked for supervised visitation every other weekend. He looked broken. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel pity either. Just relief. The kitchen is quiet. My son sleeps in the nursery next to mine. The walls are still the same shade of soft yellow my aunt painted years ago. I changed the locks, reclaimed every room, replaced every pillow Marcia had touched. Sometimes I still think about that day in the hospital. Her leaning over me, whispering that I had to leave. Sometimes I hear it when I'm brushing my teeth or folding laundry. But then I remember what came next. I didn't leave. They did. I used to think betrayal would break me, but it didn't. It burned me, scarred me, but it also showed me something. I am stronger than the people who tried to hurt me. I am more than a wife or a name on a deed or a woman in a hospital bed. I'm a mother. I'm a fighter. And I still live in my house.